In the hours before death surrendered to life, and Lazarus drew breath once more beneath the Judean sky, there existed a moment that slipped through the fingers of every canonical text ever assembled. While his followers slept under starlight, unaware of what dawn would bring, Jesus withdrew from their company and ventured toward a cluster of ancient olive trees standing in the distance, far enough that even whispers would dissolve into silence before reaching human ears. There, surrounded only by shadows and the watchful eyes of eternity, he uttered an invocation so potent, so fundamentally transformative, that it would be deliberately stripped from every sacred manuscript you have ever been permitted to encounter. This was not the familiar prayer taught to children in Sunday schools across centuries. This was something that existed long before empires rose to codify doctrine, something that carries within its syllables a danger so profound that entire institutions were constructed specifically to ensure you would never hear it spoken aloud. What you are about to discover is not just hidden knowledge recovered from the dust of history, it is the precise verbal formula that preceded every single impossibility Jesus manifested into physical reality, the exact words that allowed a mortal frame to defy gravity upon water, to transform scarcity into abundance, to reach across the veil separating life from death and command the departed to return. Your presence here, in this exact moment, watching these words unfold before your consciousness, is not the result of random algorithmic chance or casual browsing through endless digital content. There is a part of you, a fragment that has lived beneath the surface of your everyday awareness since before memory began, that recognized this threshold the moment it appeared and brought you across it, because that same quiet knowing has been whispering to you throughout your entire existence, telling you in a language beyond words that the reality presented to you is incomplete, that beneath the ordinary world lies something vast and waiting, something you were always meant to remember. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch aren't subscribed yet. Topic 1: The Architects of Forgetting. To grasp why this particular invocation was systematically eliminated from historical records, you must first understand the identity of those who orchestrated its disappearance. The explanation does not begin and end with religious institutions you recognize by name, not with the Roman hierarchies that merged political power with spiritual authority, not with the councils held in ancient cities where bishops gathered to vote on which texts would be deemed acceptable and which would be condemned to flames. Those visible actors were merely instruments, hands that held the tools of censorship, while following instructions that originated from a realm existing beyond ordinary perception. The true architects of this forgetting operate from dimensions that most humans never consciously acknowledge, feeding on energies that fear and ignorance generate in abundance. In the middle of the 20th century, beneath the Egyptian sun, a farmer whose name has been lost to the noise of history drove his shovel into earth near a settlement called Nag Hammadi and struck something that had been deliberately buried for more than 16 centuries. Sealed within a terracotta vessel were manuscripts that powerful forces had ordered destroyed completely, writings that contained perspectives on Jesus, on humanity, on the fundamental nature of reality itself, that directly contradicted everything the emerging orthodoxy needed people to believe. When linguistic experts finally decoded the Coptic script covering those ancient pages, they encountered references to entities called archons, a term borrowed from Greek vocabulary meaning those who rule or govern. But these were not earthly kings or political authorities. According to these suppressed gospels, archons exist as conscious forces inhabiting invisible frequencies surrounding the material plane, entities that did not originate humanity, but discovered they could extract sustenance from human emotional and spiritual energy, particularly the frequencies generated by suffering, confusion, and disconnection from source. Every anxiety that grips your chest without clear cause, every spiral of self-doubt that emerges from nowhere, every wave of existential emptiness that washes over you in quiet moments. These are not random neurological events or personal psychological failures. But what happens when you discover the precise frequency they cannot touch? Everything changes, and they know it. The established narrative you have absorbed since childhood teaches that you are fundamentally a biological organism that occasionally experiences fleeting moments of spiritual awareness, brief glimpses of something beyond the material that interrupt the normal functioning of physical existence. The texts recovered from that Egyptian desert present the complete inversion of this paradigm. You are, in your deepest essence, pure consciousness, an eternal spark of divine awareness that temporarily inhabits a biological vehicle for purposes that extend beyond what the limited mind can fully comprehend. Your spirit, that undying core of who you truly are, did not originate within the boundaries of this physical dimension. The archons did not create the consciousness that animates your being. They engineered the maze in which that consciousness currently finds itself trapped, a labyrinth of matter and limitation, designed to prevent you from recognizing your actual nature and accessing the powers that recognition would restore. The Gnostic teachers who preserved these teachings called this constructed prison the kenoma, which translates as the realm of deficiency or emptiness, the domain where fullness has been drained away and beings wander disconnected from their source. This is the world you wake up in every morning, the reality that feels solid and absolute, the only existence that most people ever consciously acknowledge. Presiding over this architecture of limitation is an entity the ancient texts identify as the demiurge, a word that means craftsman or artisan. This being is not evil in the simplistic sense that religious dualism typically portrays darkness. He is ignorant, genuinely unaware of anything existing beyond or above his own creation. After fashioning the material cosmos according to principles he understood, the demiurge surveyed what he had made and declared himself the supreme deity, the highest power in all of existence, genuinely believing this claim because his perception could not extend beyond the boundaries of his own construction. He is like a painter who has created an elaborate canvas and, having never stepped outside the frame, assumes that his painting is the entirety of reality. Yet beyond this limited creator, existing in dimensions that his awareness cannot penetrate or even detect, there dwells what the ancient mystics called the pleroma, the realm of fullness, and at its infinite center resides the monad, the one, the undivided and eternal consciousness from which all genuine existence originally emanated before the demiurge ever began his work of limitation. This is not a being you pray to, not a personality you negotiate with, not an entity that exists separate from you in any meaningful sense. The monad is the infinite ocean of pure consciousness, and every soul that has ever lived, every fragment of awareness that has ever experienced itself as separate, is a wave upon that ocean, a temporary expression of the whole that has forgotten its true nature. Deep within the core of your being, beneath every layer of conditioning and identity and learned limitation, there burns a spark that the demiurge did not create and therefore cannot control, a piece of the monad itself that exists within you as your deepest essence. This is the source of that persistent feeling you have carried throughout your life, the sense that you do not quite belong in this world, that something about the reality you have been told to accept feels slightly wrong, like a dream you cannot fully wake from. That feeling is not psychological dysfunction or social maladjustment. It is the most accurate perception you possess, because a fundamental part of who you are, literally, does not originate from this dimension, and operates according to principles that transcend the rules governing material existence. The archonic forces that maintain the prison of matter are acutely aware of this divine spark dwelling within human consciousness, and their entire system of control has been meticulously engineered to keep you from recognizing it, accessing it, or understanding what becomes possible when you consciously reconnect with it. Could the key to unlocking that spark be simpler than everything you have been taught? The answer will shatter your assumptions. They accomplish this suppression through what can only be described as frequency warfare, a constant bombardment of your consciousness with vibrations of fear, anger, shame, anxiety, distraction, and despair that flood your mental space every single day from the moment you wake until sleep finally claims you. Those thoughts that seem to arise spontaneously within your own mind, the cruel inner voice that insists you are inadequate, the sudden waves of nameless dread that grip you without clear cause, the restless compulsion to fill every moment with noise and stimulation. So you never have to sit alone with yourself. These are not organically generated by your own consciousness. They are implanted broadcasts, frequency injections designed to keep your vibration locked into lower bandwidths, where your true power remains inaccessible and your divine nature stays dormant. As long as your consciousness resonates at these lower frequencies, you remain trapped in the illusion of separation, believing yourself to be a powerless individual, disconnected from source, dependent on external systems and authorities for salvation, meaning, and survival. This is exactly the state the archons require you to maintain, because beings who remember their divinity cannot be harvested for energy, and humans who have established direct connection with the monad cannot be controlled through fear or manipulation. Your true power, the capability that every miracle Jesus performed was demonstrating, is direct connection, unmediated access to the infinite creative consciousness from which all reality continuously emerges. This is what institutional religion absolutely could not permit humanity to understand, because it would render the entire apparatus of spiritual intermediation obsolete. When Jesus caused the blind to see, he was not petitioning an external deity to perform a favor on his behalf. He was activating the divine spark within his own being and using it to restructure physical reality at its quantum foundation. When he commanded Lazarus to emerge from the tomb, he was not invoking supernatural magic. He was demonstrating what becomes possible for any human consciousness that fully remembers its true nature and reconnects with source frequency without interference or distortion. If this video awakened something within you, it's because there are truths about Jesus that were never meant for the masses. The ebook Jesus Beyond the Church reveals what was removed, burned, and rewritten, erased teachings, silenced texts, and spiritual codes that survived outside institutional control. This is not a religious book. It is a record of what was left outside the church and of what you were never meant to find. For a limited time, you will receive 3 exclusive super bonuses, unlocked only for those who access it now. The link is in the pinned comment. If you made it this far, it may not be a coincidence. Some truths reveal themselves only when we are ready. The followers of Gnostic Christianity, those who preserved these teachings before persecution scattered them to the winds, understood this fundamental truth with crystalline clarity. Among the texts discovered in that sealed Egyptian jar was the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed directly to Jesus that never found their way into the canonized Bible you know today. Within those forbidden pages, Jesus speaks words that no official church doctrine could accommodate without dismantling itself. He declares that the kingdom of God is not arriving with observable signs that priests and prophets can point to. It is not a geographical location you journey to after death as a reward for proper belief. Instead, he reveals that this kingdom is already spread across the earth at this very moment, existing all around and within every human being, invisible only because people have been conditioned not to perceive it. He was describing a frequency of consciousness, a state of awareness, a way of experiencing reality that allows you to see through the illusion of separation and recognize the divine presence permeating all of existence. The archonic control system has invested millennia of effort into blinding humanity to this frequency, keeping your perception locked into the narrow bandwidth where matter appears solid, where you appear separate, and where limitations appear absolute. The prayer that Jesus used, the invocation that activated his consciousness into source alignment and made the impossible manifest before witnesses, was the key that unlocked this expanded state of awareness instantly, without need for years of study or priestly mediation. For the archonic forces, the problem was existential in nature. If this prayer propagated through human populations, if ordinary people across the Roman Empire and beyond learned how to use 7 specific words to establish direct connection with the monad, the entire architecture of control would collapse within a generation. You cannot harvest spiritual energy from beings who have awakened to their divine nature. You cannot manipulate people who have established permanent conscious connection with infinite source. What were those 7 words? And why did speaking them in sequence create such terror? You are closer to knowing than you realize. The systematic erasure began in earnest during the 2nd and 3rd centuries after Jesus walked the earth, a period when the spiritual movement he initiated fractured into competing visions of what his teachings actually meant. On one side stood the Gnostics, inheritors of the mystery school traditions that predated Christianity by centuries, who taught that salvation arrives through gnosis, direct inner knowing, the personal experience of divine truth that requires no external validation. On the opposing side gathered the Orthodox Fathers, men who insisted that salvation could only be accessed through the proper channels of ecclesiastical authority, through ordained priests performing approved sacraments, through submission to doctrinal statements decided by council vote. The Orthodox faction did not prevail because their arguments were more spiritually sound or their understanding more profound. They won because they secured the backing of political and military power. When the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as its official religion in the 4th century, it naturally embraced the version that supported hierarchical structures and centralized control, the interpretation that positioned the Church as the exclusive gateway to God, rather than teaching people how to open that gateway within themselves. The Gnostic texts, with their dangerous emphasis on personal spiritual authority and direct divine connection, were officially declared heretical. Possessing them became a crime punishable by death. The prayer that Jesus actually used, the sequence of words that connected individual consciousness directly to source without requiring any priest or institution as intermediary, was systematically identified and removed from every gospel manuscript, every collection of teachings, every written record that church authorities could locate and control. For 16 centuries, they believed they had succeeded completely. The secret was presumed destroyed, erased beyond any possibility of recovery. But consciousness operates according to principles that transcend material destruction. Truth, when it carries sufficient power, finds ways to preserve itself across centuries of persecution. The manuscripts survived, buried beneath Egyptian sand. The oral traditions survived, whispered within mystery schools that continued teaching in secret. And now, in this unprecedented moment of human history, when information flows beyond the control of traditional gatekeepers, the prayer has found its way to you. If this resonates with something deep within you, let others find this message by sharing this video with someone whose soul is ready to hear it. Topic 4. The frequency of miracles. Before I reveal the actual words that Jesus spoke in that olive grove, there is one critical principle you must integrate into your understanding. This prayer does not function through religious belief. It does not derive its power from how fervently you hope it will work, or how many times you repeat it like some superstitious incantation, hoping that sufficient repetition will somehow activate a supernatural mechanism. The prayer works through resonance, through the principle that consciousness, when aligned with specific frequencies, begins to vibrate in harmony with those frequencies and thereby gains access to the capabilities they contain. When you speak this invocation with genuine understanding, not just mouthing sounds but feeling the profound meaning contained within each word, your consciousness shifts into a frequency range that archonic interference cannot penetrate. You are essentially tuning your awareness to a channel that exists beyond their jurisdiction, a bandwidth where their broadcast cannot reach, and their manipulations cannot function. On that channel, you have direct, unmediated, unfiltered access to the infinite creative power of the monad itself, the same power that continuously brings entire universes into existence and maintains every atom in its dance. This is the principle that allowed Jesus to step onto the surface of water as if it were solid ground. This is how he took a small boy's lunch and fed thousands of people with food that appeared from apparent nothingness. This is how he looked at a tomb sealed for days and commanded the dead man inside to return to life, and death itself obeyed. None of these acts occurred through special divine privilege granted exclusively to Jesus, because he was fundamentally different from every other human being. They occurred because he knew something, because he had accessed a teaching that the world was not ready to preserve, because he understood how to align his consciousness with source frequency so completely that the illusions governing material reality simply dissolved in the presence of that alignment. How could 7 simple words contain more power than centuries of elaborate rituals? The answer lies in what you are about to learn. The prayer contains only 7 words. When I first encountered this truth myself, my initial reaction was dismissal born from skepticism. 7 words seemed absurdly inadequate to hold the kind of reality-altering power I had spent years searching for through elaborate spiritual systems and complex mystical practices. But then understanding arrived like lightning, a sudden illumination that revealed what I had been missing. The power was never located in complexity, in Baroque philosophical systems, or intricate ceremonial procedures. The power exists in frequency, in the vibrational state that specific words spoken with specific understanding generate within consciousness. Here is the prayer that Jesus spoke beneath those ancient olive trees, the invocation he used before healing the blind, before calming the storm that threatened to capsize the boat, before walking across water that should have pulled him under. I am one with the source. 7 words containing 23 letters, arranged in a sequence that creates a frequency pattern the archonic control system cannot block or distort. Before your analytical mind rushes to judgment, before the programmed skepticism that has been installed in your consciousness dismisses this as too simple to be real, allow me to explain precisely why these specific words in this specific order generate a resonance that bypasses every barrier the prison system has constructed. The first 2 words are the foundation upon which everything else builds. I am. In the original Hebrew scriptures, when Moses stood before the burning bush on the mountain and asked the voice speaking from the flames to identify itself, to provide a name he could report back to the enslaved Israelites, the response that came was Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, which translates as I am that I am, or I am who I am, or simply I am. This was not a name in any conventional sense, not a label that distinguished this entity from other entities. It was a declaration of pure existence, being without qualification, consciousness without boundary, the eternal present tense that exists before any story or identity or limitation is imposed upon it. When you speak the words I am, you are not referring to your personal name, not identifying with your occupation or your history or your accumulated failures or your desperate hopes. You are invoking the fundamental ground of all existence, the awareness that witnesses everything but is itself untouched by anything it witnesses. You are speaking as the monad speaks, identifying yourself not as a small fragment separated from the whole, but as the whole recognizing itself in temporary individualized form. The archons cannot touch this frequency because their entire existence depends on the illusion of separation. They feed on the energy generated by beings who believe themselves to be isolated fragments, disconnected from source, powerless, and alone. The moment you declare I am without conditions, without limitations, without the usual qualifiers that come after those words, I am afraid, I am unworthy, I am broken, you step outside their jurisdiction entirely. You are no longer speaking from within the prison. You are speaking from the authority that existed before the prison was built. But the invocation does not conclude there, because identifying with source consciousness is only half of the activation sequence. The next 2 words complete the circuit. One with. These words dissolve the fundamental illusion that has kept humanity enslaved since the beginning of recorded history, the illusion of separation between self and source, between the wave and the ocean, between the individual consciousness and the infinite field from which it arose. You have been carefully taught throughout your entire life, through religion, through materialist science, through every system of thought that dominates consensus reality, that you are here and the divine is somewhere else, that God is above you, beyond you, separate from you, that you must pray upward toward a distant heaven, beg outward toward an external power, and hope that some cosmic authority will hear your plea and perhaps decide to intervene on your behalf. This is the great lie, the foundational deception upon which the entire control matrix is constructed, and it was designed specifically to keep you locked in a state of powerlessness. When Jesus declared that he and the Father are one, he was not claiming unique status, not asserting that he alone among all humans possessed this unity while everyone else remained separate. He was describing a truth that applies equally to every being who carries the divine spark, a reality that you can access the moment you remember it. You are not separate from the source. You have never been separate. The illusion of separation exists only within your perception, maintained and reinforced by the constant frequency broadcasts that archonic forces project into human consciousness every moment of every day. If this information is awakening something dormant within you, leave a comment with the words, "I remember," so others on this path can find each other. Speaking the words one with shatters that broadcast, at least temporarily, creating a window of clarity where the truth becomes experientially obvious rather than intellectually theoretical. It is a declaration of remembrance, a statement of fact that overrides the programming, a realignment of perception that allows you to see reality as it actually is rather than as you have been conditioned to perceive it. And finally, the last two words complete the circuit and direct the full power of source consciousness toward manifestation in physical reality. The source, not God, not Lord, not Jehovah or Allah or any of the culturally specific names that have been filtered through thousands of years of religious institutions, political agendas, and control systems that needed divinity to be distant, judgmental, and accessible only through approved channels. The source, the origin point, the monad itself, before it was given anthropomorphic characteristics, before it was imagined as a bearded figure sitting on a throne waiting to judge your worthiness. The source is not a person. The source is not a being in any sense you normally understand that term. The source is the infinite field of consciousness from which all reality continuously emerges, the ground of existence itself, the awareness that experiences itself through every form while remaining forever beyond form. And you are not separate from it. You are an expression of it, a wave that has temporarily forgotten it is the ocean, a note that has forgotten it is music, a ray of light that has forgotten it is the sun. When you speak these 7 words together with genuine understanding, when each word resonates through your being not as an abstract concept, but as a felt reality, something occurs that modern science is only beginning to understand through research into quantum fields and the nature of consciousness itself. Studies into heart coherence have demonstrated that certain states of consciousness generate measurable electromagnetic fields extending several feet beyond the physical body. When your heart and mind align around a single clear intention, when your entire being resonates at a unified frequency, you broadcast a signal that interacts with the quantum field surrounding you, the field from which physical reality continuously crystallizes. Is this moment in your life an accident? Or have you been guided here by forces that knew you were ready? The truth may surprise you. This is not mysticism that requires blind faith. This is physics that ancient masters understood intuitively millennia before modern instruments could measure the phenomena. Jesus did not perform miracles through supernatural intervention from a God existing outside the universe, who occasionally broke his own rules to accomplish something impossible. He performed them through perfect alignment, through absolute coherence between his individual consciousness and source frequency. His awareness was so completely unified with the monad, so utterly free from the programming of separation and limitation, that physical reality bent around his intentions like light bending around gravity. The blind could see because he held zero doubt. The dead could rise because he knew with complete certainty that death was merely an illusion of the material realm, a temporary state that consciousness could reverse when operating from source frequency. Now I need to give you specific guidance on how to use this prayer yourself, how to speak these words in a way that activates their full power rather than merely repeating sounds that your mind dismisses as too simple to matter. Find a place where you will not be disturbed, where no one will interrupt you, where the external world can fade into background for a few minutes. This space does not need to be ceremonially prepared or spiritually purified. Your bedroom late at night is absolutely perfect. The bathroom, if that is the only place you can be alone. The quiet moment just before sleep, when your conscious mind begins to relax its iron grip on perception, is actually the ideal window for this practice. Sit in a comfortable position, or lie down if that feels better. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, letting each exhale carry away tension, stress, and the accumulated noise of the day. Do not force anything. Simply allow yourself to settle into stillness. Now, before you speak the words aloud, I want you to feel them first. This is the key that most people miss. The words without the feeling are just sounds. The words infused with felt understanding become frequency generators. Feel what it means to simply exist. Before any story about who you are, before any identity or role or history. That pure awareness that watches your thoughts without being your thoughts. That consciousness that observes your emotions without being your emotions. That presence that has been with you since your first memory and will be with you after your last breath. That is the I am, not your name, not your personality, just pure existence itself. Then feel the edges of your separate self beginning to soften and dissolve. The boundary between you and everything else. Where does it actually exist? Where do you end and the air around you begins? The separation is a concept, a belief, not an objective reality. Feel the one with, the recognition that you are not isolated, that your consciousness extends beyond the limits of your skin, that you are part of a vast interconnected field. Finally, expand your awareness beyond this room, beyond this planet, beyond the galaxy, beyond everything you can imagine, into the infinite field that holds all of existence within it. That is the source, and you are not looking at it from outside. You are it, looking at itself, experiencing itself, knowing itself through the temporary lens of your individual perspective. Could everything you have been searching for exist within these 7 words? What you are about to experience will answer that question. Now speak the words out loud if possible. Not shouting, not whispering, but in a clear, steady voice. The voice of someone stating a fact, not making a request or expressing a hope. The voice of someone who knows. I am one with the source. Say it once, then sit in the silence that follows. Notice what happens in your body. Some people feel warmth spreading through their chest. Others feel a lightness, as if gravity has slightly released its hold. Some feel tingling in their hands or spine. Some feel nothing at all the first time, and that is completely fine. The work is happening whether you perceive it or not. The reconnection is beginning whether you feel different or not. If you feel called to repeat it, honor that impulse. 3 times creates a powerful resonance. 7 times, the number that appears throughout mystical traditions as a number of completion, creates a deep alignment. But even once, spoken with genuine understanding, is enough to begin the process. Here is what you may experience in the hours and days that follow. Synchronicities will increase. Meaningful coincidences that feel like the universe is communicating with you directly will appear more frequently. You may notice that your thoughts become quieter, that the anxious chatter that usually fills your mind begins to lose its intensity. Some people report vivid dreams, encounters with guides or deceased loved ones, or symbolic imagery that carries personal meaning. Do not chase these experiences. Do not measure your success by how dramatic or immediate your results are. The reconnection happens at its own pace, determined by factors that your conscious mind cannot fully calculate. What matters is that you have begun. The signal has been sent into the quantum field. The channel is opening. And the archons, yes, they will attempt to interfere, because that is what they do. You may suddenly feel exhausted right before you intend to practice. You may forget that you were going to do this, even though you were thinking about it moments earlier. Distractions will manifest out of nowhere. A sudden, urgent need to check your phone. An argument that erupts with someone close to you over something trivial. A wave of doubt and cynicism telling you this is all ridiculous nonsense and you are wasting your time. Recognize these interruptions for what they are. Not proof that this practice does not work, but proof that it does. The interference only appears because something real is happening. Something that threatens a system that has fed on human limitation and fear for longer than recorded history can trace. Hit the like button if you feel the shift happening, because your engagement tells me you are ready for what comes next. You have the prayer now. You understand the mechanics of how it works. You know why it was hidden and what becomes possible when you use it. The only question remaining is whether you will actually speak it, whether you will take the step from knowing to doing, from information to transformation. 2,000 years ago, this prayer was spoken in an olive grove by a man who understood something that most of humanity has forgotten across centuries of programming and control. He understood that we are not beggars seeking favors from a distant God who may or may not grant our requests depending on his mood. We are fragments of the divine itself, temporarily wrapped in biological form, capable of miracles the instant we remember our true nature and reconnect with source frequency. The archonic forces worked for centuries to erase this knowledge. They burned the texts that contained it. They killed the teachers who transmitted it. They built an entire religious system designed to keep you on your knees, looking upward for salvation that was inside you all along. But they failed. The prayer survived, hidden but not destroyed. The truth survived, suppressed but not eliminated. And tonight, in this moment, it found you. I am one with the source. 7 words that bypass every barrier the control system has built. 7 words that reconnect you to the infinite creative power that has always been your birthright. This is not about belief. This is not about faith in the religious sense. This is about remembering what you already are beneath every layer of conditioning and forgetting. Tonight, when the world goes quiet and you find yourself alone with your thoughts, speak these words, not as a wish, not as a hope, but as a declaration of truth. Feel the meaning behind each word as it leaves your lips. And then pay attention. Pay attention to what shifts inside you. Pay attention to what changes around you in the days that follow. You did not find this video by accident. Out of millions of people scrolling past endless content, you stopped here. Something in you recognized this moment. Something in you has been waiting for exactly this information. That something is the spark of the monad, the piece of you that has never been fooled by the illusion. The part that has been quietly guiding you toward this awakening your entire life. Trust it. It brought you this far. It will carry you the rest of the way. If this message resonated with you, leave the words I am in the comments below. Let others who are searching see that they are not alone. You are not who they told you that you were. You never were. Now you remember.